I want to ask you a simple question. Who decides your worth? Is it your boss, your friends, your family, the people who ignore your messages, the ones who only call when they need something? The truth is, too many of us let other people dictate our value. We keep showing up for people who wouldn't even notice if we stopped. We give our energy, our kindness, our loyalty to those who wouldn't do the same for us. And when they don't value us, we wonder, what's wrong with me? But here's what I want you to understand. Nothing is wrong with you. People's inability to see your worth is their limitation, not yours. So what do? Do we get angry? Do we try harder to prove ourselves? Do we shrink into self-doubt? No, we choose differently. We start by understanding that the way people treat us is a reflection of them, not us. A person who does not appreciate you might be battling insecurities of their own. They may not even know how to value others because they don't value themselves. And that's not your burden to carry. Step 1, set the standard. People will treat you the way you allow them to. If you keep accepting less than you deserve, that's exactly what you'll keep getting. But the moment you raise your standards, you send a message. Without even saying a word, you show the world, this is how I expect to be treated. And if someone can't meet that, you walk away. Not in anger, not in bitterness, but in confidence. Because walking away isn't about proving a point to them, it's about proving a point to yourself. Step 2, focus on your circle. If someone doesn't value you, stop chasing their approval. Instead, turn to the people who already do, the ones who support you, encourage you, and remind you of your worth. Those are your people. And if you don't have them yet, start looking, because they exist. Step 3, lead with integrity. It's easy to respond to disrespect with resentment, to mirror the behavior of those who dismiss us. But that's not leadership, that's reaction. True leadership is choosing to value others even when they don't value you. Not because they deserve it, but because that's who you are. You don't need their validation to know your worth. You don't need their approval to be whole. You are valuable because you exist. And once you truly believe that, you'll never waste another second convincing someone else. Every human being has an innate desire to feel valued. It's not just about recognition or praise. It's about knowing that we matter, that our presence makes a difference, that the time and energy we invest in others are reciprocated in some meaningful way. This need isn't driven by ego. It's wired into us. From the time we're born, we seek connection, acknowledgement, and a sense of belonging. We thrive when we feel seen, heard, and appreciated. And when we don't, something inside us feels off. It shows up in small ways. When a friend forgets something important to us, when a colleague dismisses our ideas, when someone only reaches out when they need something. It happens in big ways too. When we stay in relationships where we're taken for granted, when we give our best to people who don't give back, when we shrink ourselves to fit into spaces that don't truly accept us. The feeling of being undervalued is more than just disappointing. Over time, it can make us question our own worth. But why does this affect us so deeply? Because being valued is about more than just feeling good, it's about survival. In the earliest human societies, being part of a group wasn't a luxury, it was a necessity. Isolation meant danger. Rejection could mean death. And though our modern world no longer operates under the same physical threats, our emotional wiring hasn't changed. When we feel unappreciated or overlooked, something ancient inside us is triggered. Our brains interpret exclusion as a threat. We start searching for ways to fix it, to prove ourselves, to regain our place in the tribe. That's why when people don't value us, we react the way we do. We try harder, we explain ourselves, we give more. We hope that if we just do enough, say enough, or become enough, they will finally see us. But that approach rarely works the way we want it to. Instead, we end up pouring more and more into people and situations that are never going to give back in the way we need. And in that process, we risk losing sight of something even more important, our own sense of self-worth. When someone doesn't value us, our first instinct is often to take it personally. We start asking ourselves questions. Did I do something wrong? Am I not good enough? What could I have done differently? We analyze their words, their actions, their silence, searching for a reason, a clue, an answer that will make sense of the way they treat us. But more often than not, their behavior has little to do with us and everything to do with them. People act based on their own experiences, beliefs, and struggles. Someone who disregards your time might not know how to value their own. Someone who takes you for granted may have been raised in an environment where appreciation was never expressed. Someone who ignores your needs may be consumed by their own. Their actions are shaped by their circumstances, their past, their fears, their insecurities, and the way they see the world. But because we experience their behavior firsthand, we assume it's a reflection of us. It's easy to believe that if someone doesn't appreciate us, it means we're not worth appreciating. If they don't prioritize us, it means we're not important. But that's a dangerous mindset because it places our value in the hands of others. And the truth is, people can only give what they have. A person who has never experienced true respect may struggle to show it. A person who has been taught that love is conditional may not know how to love freely. A person who is overwhelmed with their own problems may not have the capacity to show up for us in the way we hope. This doesn't mean we should excuse toxic behavior or allow mistreatment, but it does mean we need to separate people's actions from our own worth. When we take everything personally, we give others too much control over our emotions and self-perception. But when we recognize that their actions are more about their circumstances than about us, we gain the clarity to see things as they are. Instead of internalizing their lack of appreciation as a sign that we're unworthy, we can begin to understand that their inability to value us is rooted in something far beyond us. And walking away is one of the hardest things to do, not because we don't know how to, but because we don't want to. We hold on to the hope that things will change, that people will see our worth if we just stay a little longer, if we just prove ourselves a little more. The idea of leaving feels like failure, like giving up on something we invested time, energy, and emotion into. But staying in a space where we are not valued is far more damaging than leaving ever will be. We hesitate because we want closure, we want validation, we want them to realize what they lost, but waiting for someone to acknowledge our worth is a dangerous game. It puts our sense of self in their hands. The longer we stay in places where we are not valued, the more we start to believe that maybe we don't deserve to be valued. We shrink ourselves to fit into spaces that were never meant for us, hoping that if we become smaller, quieter, easier, we will finally be accepted. But the truth is, the people who truly value us will never need us to shrink. Walking away is not about proving a point to others. It's about proving something to ourselves. It's an act of self-respect. It's choosing to no longer fight for a seat at a table that was never meant for us. It's understanding that our time and energy are too precious to be wasted on people who do not see them as valuable. And yet, even when we know this, the act of walking away still feels heavy. It's not just about leaving a person, a job, a friendship, or a situation. It's about leaving behind the version of ourselves that tolerated less than we deserved. It's about breaking patterns, letting go of expectations, and accepting that sometimes the closure we seek comes not from them, but from the moment we decide to walk away and never look back. People treat us based on the standards we set for ourselves. Consciously or unconsciously, we teach others how to treat us by what we allow, what we tolerate, and what we reinforce. Every time we overlook a dismissive comment, accept half-hearted effort, or continue to show up for people who don't reciprocate, we send a silent message. This is okay, this is enough, this is what I accept. And people respond accordingly. It's not about demanding perfection from others or expecting constant validation. It's about recognizing that our worth is not up for negotiation. When we set a standard, we define the boundaries of what is acceptable and what isn't. If we allow disrespect, we make room for more of it. If we continue to chase people who make no effort to meet us halfway, we signal that we are okay with being an option rather than a priority. Raising our standards is not about arrogance, it's about clarity. It's about understanding that valuing ourselves is not selfish, it's necessary. The way we treat ourselves sets the tone for how others treat us. If we respect our time, others will learn to respect it. If we expect honesty, we will naturally distance ourselves from those who can't offer it. If we choose to surround ourselves with people who uplift and support us, we make it clear that we will not settle for anything less. But setting the standard isn't just about what we demand from others. It's also about what we hold ourselves accountable for. It means embodying the same values we expect from those around us. It means showing up with integrity, being the kind of person who values others, and refusing to compromise on what matters. Because the people who truly belong in our lives, the ones who see our worth and respect our presence, will always rise to meet the standards we set. When someone doesn't value us, our instinct is often to respond with ego. We want to prove our worth, demand respect, or retaliate by treating them with the same disregard they showed us. It feels like the only way to protect ourselves, to regain a sense of control. But in reality, ego is just a mask for deeper emotions: hurt, disappointment, rejection. It pushes us to seek validation rather than understanding, to react rather than reflect. And in the process, we lose sight of something far more powerful: empathy. Empathy doesn't mean excusing bad behavior or accepting mistreatment. It doesn't mean allowing someone to take advantage of us. What it does mean is recognizing that people act based on their own internal struggles, fears, and limitations. Someone who cannot value you may not even know how to value themselves. Someone who is dismissive or distant may be dealing with battles you cannot see. Their actions are rarely about you, they are a reflection of their own world. When we choose empathy over ego, we shift our perspective. Instead of taking their actions as a personal attack, we see them as a product of their experiences. This doesn't mean we have to keep them in our lives, but it does mean we can release the resentment that weighs us down. It allows us to walk away with peace instead of anger, with understanding instead of bitterness. Ego wants to fight, to prove something, to win. But true strength comes from knowing we don't need to prove anything at all. When we approach life with empathy, we free ourselves from the exhausting cycle of seeking approval from those who may never be capable of giving it. Instead of reacting with pride, we respond with wisdom. We set boundaries, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. We let go not because we have lost, but because we understand that holding on to people who cannot meet us where we are is never the path to fulfillment. The people we surround ourselves with shape our mindset, our confidence, and even our sense of self-worth. Who we allow into our circle matters. Not everyone deserves a front row seat in our lives, and not everyone has earned the right to influence how we see ourselves. Yet too often we waste time chasing approval from those who don't truly value us, while overlooking the people who do. Trust is not just about honesty, it's about reliability, consistency, and mutual respect. It's about knowing that the people around us will support us, not just when things are easy, but when things get difficult. It's about surrounding ourselves with those who genuinely celebrate our wins and stand by us during our struggles. If we consistently invest in relationships that drain us, that make us feel small or insignificant, we are robbing ourselves of the deep and meaningful connections that could uplift us instead. Not everyone will appreciate us. Not everyone will see our worth. That's not a reflection of us. It's a reflection of who they are and what they value. But the good news is that we get to choose who we allow into our inner circle. We get to decide whose opinions shape us, whose energy we absorb, and whose presence we prioritize. Building a strong circle of trust requires discernment. It means recognizing the difference between those who are present only when it's convenient for them and those who show up because they truly care. It means walking away from relationships that feel transactional and investing in the ones that are rooted in authenticity. It means understanding that trust is not about proximity, it's about depth. Some people may have been in our lives for years, but have never truly been there for us, while others we meet along the way become pillars of support. When we surround ourselves with the right people, we no longer feel the need to prove our worth. We don't have to fight for attention or validation. We don't have to wonder where we stand. In the right circle, respect is mutual, appreciation is natural, and trust is never something we have to beg for. Giving is one of the most powerful ways to build meaningful relationships. Whether it's our time, our energy, our kindness, or our support, what we offer to others is a reflection of who we are. But when we give without boundaries, when we pour into people who only take, we risk depleting ourselves. Generosity without limits doesn't make us more valuable, it makes us more vulnerable to being taken for granted. There's a difference between giving out of abundance and giving out of obligation. When we give from a place of abundance, we do so freely with no expectation of return because we genuinely want to. But when we give because we feel we have to, because we're afraid of disappointing others, or because we believe our worth is tied to how much we do for people, we start crossing the line between generosity and self-sacrifice. The challenge is that when we give without boundaries, we often attract people who take without limits. The more we overextend ourselves, the more others come to expect it. What starts as kindness can quickly turn into imbalance, where we are the ones always showing up, always making the effort, always compromising. And when we finally realize that the effort isn't being reciprocated, we feel drained, unappreciated, and even resentful. Setting boundaries doesn't mean giving less, it means giving wisely. It means recognizing that our energy is finite and that not everyone is entitled to it. It means understanding that saying no to the wrong people allows us to say yes to the right ones. Boundaries protect both our well-being and our relationships because they ensure that we give in a way that is healthy, sustainable, and meaningful. The people who truly value us will respect the limits we set. They won't guilt us into overextending ourselves, nor will they disappear the moment we stop catering to their needs. They will understand that healthy relationships are built on mutual effort, not one-sided giving. And when we learn to give with boundaries, we create space for the kind of connections that leave us fulfilled rather than depleted. For most of our lives, we are taught to measure our worth based on external validation. We learn to associate our value with how much we achieve, how others perceive us, and whether we are accepted or appreciated. We internalize the idea that our worth is something that must be proven, something that is earned through the approval of others. And so we chase validation, seeking recognition from our bosses, affirmation from our friends, love from people who may never be capable of giving it to us in the way we need. But this way of thinking is flawed because it places our sense of self in the hands of people who are often too distracted, too wounded, or too unaware to truly see us. Our worth is not determined by how much we do for others, how many people choose us, or how often we are acknowledged. It is not measured by how many invitations we receive, how many compliments we get, or how many people stay in our lives. Our worth exists independently of all of these things. The problem is, when we rely on external sources to define our value, we become trapped in an endless cycle of seeking and proving. We overextend ourselves, we tolerate less than we deserve, we allow mistreatment, all because on some level we believe that if we do more, if we become more, we will finally be enough. Redefining our worth means unlearning this belief. It means understanding that our value is not something that fluctuates based on how others treat us. It means knowing, without question, that we are already enough, not because of what we do, but because of who we are. When we embrace this, we stop looking for validation in places that will never provide it. We stop allowing people who don't see our worth to make us question it. We stop giving power to situations and relationships that do not align with our self-respect. This shift is not about arrogance or self-importance. It is about stepping into a mindset where we no longer seek permission to feel valuable. It is about recognizing that our worth is not a negotiation, not a reward, and not something that can be taken away. It is something we carry with us, something that is inherent, something that remains constant, regardless of who sees it and who doesn't. Integrity is not just about being honest with others, it's about being honest with ourselves. It's about aligning our actions with our values, even when it's inconvenient, even when no one is watching, even when it means making difficult choices. When we lead with integrity, we choose authenticity over approval, principles over popularity, and self-respect over short-term validation. Influence, short-term validation, is as deep and involved as anything. And there may be a more important vehicle and their biggest source of value over short-term validation. It is the foundation of a strong character, and more importantly, it is the key to building relationships that are based on trust, respect, and mutual appreciation. One of the greatest challenges in dealing with people who don't value us is resisting the temptation to compromise our integrity in an effort to prove our worth. It's easy to lower our standards, to seek validation through actions that go against our better judgment, or to engage in behavior that is not true to who we are just to gain the acceptance we crave. But when we do this, we betray ourselves. We send the message that external approval matters more than internal alignment, and in the end, no amount of recognition from others can compensate for the feeling of knowing we abandon our own values. Leading with integrity means holding ourselves to the same standards we expect from others. It means setting boundaries and standing by them, even when it's difficult. It means refusing to play games, manipulate situations, or diminish ourselves just to fit into spaces where we are not truly appreciated. When we operate from a place of integrity, we do not chase relationships that require us to become someone we're not. We do not beg for respect that should be freely given. We do not compromise our self-worth just to gain temporary validation. Integrity is what gives us peace of mind. It ensures that when we walk away from situations where we are not valued, we do so with dignity, knowing that we never compromise who we are. It allows us to move through life with confidence, attracting the right people, the ones who respect us, not just for what we do, but for the principles we stand for. When we lead with integrity, we don't have to demand respect. It is naturally given to us by those who recognize the strength it takes to stay true to ourselves, no matter the circumstances. In the moment, it's easy to get caught up in how others treat us. When someone disregards our efforts, fails to appreciate our presence, or makes us feel invisible, the sting of that experience can consume us. We replay conversations in our minds, searching for where things went wrong. We wonder what we could have done differently, as if changing ourselves might have changed the outcome. But when we zoom out and take a long-term perspective, we begin to see things more clearly. Not everyone we encounter is meant to stay in our lives. Some people enter only to teach us a lesson about self-worth, about boundaries, about the kind of relationships we do and do not deserve. In the short term, rejection and lack of appreciation may feel like failure, but in the long run, they often serve as redirection. The friendships that fade, the opportunities that don't work out, the people who fail to see our value, these experiences are not just setbacks, they are guiding us towards something better. A long-term perspective reminds us that our worth is not determined by temporary circumstances. Just because someone doesn't value us today doesn't mean we are not valuable. Just because we are overlooked in one space doesn't mean we won't be deeply appreciated in another. Life is always evolving, and the people who dismiss us now may one day realize what they lost. But by the time they do, we will have moved on, having grown into a version of ourselves that no longer needs their validation. Looking ahead also helps us make better choices. Instead of reacting emotionally to the present moment, we can ask ourselves, will this matter in 5 years? Is this person or situation aligned with where I want to be? Am I investing my time in something that will serve me in the long run? When we focus on the bigger picture, we stop chasing short-term validation and start investing in relationships, opportunities, and experiences that contribute to our long-term growth and fulfillment. The truth is, people who don't value us today may never have been meant to walk with us into the future we are building. And when we trust that our worth is not tied to fleeting moments, we free ourselves from the need to seek approval in places that were never meant to sustain us. Instead, we focus on becoming the kind of person who values themselves so deeply that they naturally attract the right people, the right opportunities, and the right future. The way people treat us is often a reflection of their own circumstances, beliefs, and limitations, not a measure of our worth. When we internalize their lack of appreciation, we give them power over how we see ourselves. But true self-worth is never something that should be placed in the hands of others. It is something we define, protect, and reinforce through the standards we set, the boundaries we uphold, and the relationships we choose to invest in. Walking away from those who do not value us is not an act of weakness. It is an act of self-respect. It is a decision to no longer beg for recognition in spaces that cannot offer it. It is a commitment to surrounding ourselves with people who uplift us, who see our worth without us having to prove it, and who treat us with the same respect and care we offer in return. Leading with integrity, practicing empathy, and maintaining a long-term perspective allow us to move through life with confidence. We stop reacting to temporary setbacks and start focusing on the bigger picture. We give, but with boundaries. We invest in relationships that are built on trust and mutual appreciation. And most importantly, we recognize that the people who fail to see our value do not define it. In the end, our worth is not measured by how others treat us. It is measured by how we choose to treat ourselves. And when we embrace that truth, we no longer chase validation. We attract respect. We stand tall in who we are, and we build a life where we are valued, not because we demanded it, but because we chose to never settle for anything less.